I've said this before, I'll say it again. I feel very strongly about this. I think that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad access agent. I think that the support of Jeffrey Epstein as someone who was just a proud and loyal Jew and not an access agent that we're hearing from the likes of Alan Dershowitz is nonsense. But, when we talk about files, we're not necessarily talking about paper files in an envelope that says, evidence of pedophilia. We're talking about computer hard drives and disks and videos and DVDs. There has to be something out there.
This just blew me away when I discovered that there was so much information about this sordid mess that's just available on the internet. Yet, there is a ton. And I got it all from an AI discovered, which amalgamates 5 or 6 AIs into one. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Epstein's crimes today, and you might be surprised that the sex crimes kind of pale when compared to all the other shit he did. So here goes. Oh, yeah, and I'm also going to name some of the pedos who were accused by the victims at the end.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed.
However, you can't understand what went on unless you know a little bit about the Mossad, because Jeffrey Epstein was hip deep, and so was Ghislaine Maxwell. So let's take a little look here. Mossad didn't just help clean money for criminals, i.e. Epstein. Mossad is the apex laundering network for any crime that serves Israel's state interest, from diamond smuggling and arms racketeering to crypto terror funding and nuclear tech procurement. It's not a side gig, it's structural. Jeffrey Epstein's money wasn't the product of genius investing. He was running a black budget, intelligence-adjacent slush fund whose primary purpose was to launder cash and funnel it into 3 overlapping criminal pipelines. 1, multi-layered extortion rings. 2, tax-free capital flight for oligarchs. And 3, covert political bribery accounts. And I think you're probably going to be surprised when we get into that deeper later on in the video. I certainly was.
Of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Now, as part of our investigation, we spoke to Ari Ben-Mashani, who is a former Israeli spy. He said on the record unequivocally that Jeffrey Epstein was working for Israeli intelligence operations, the Mossad, and running a classic honey trap operation. That is, lure people inside, record their activities, and learn about their peccadillos and use it to blackmail them. This is a former spy on the record in the new book, Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Interestingly, this person was also the handler of Jeffrey Epstein's best friend and ex-girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. She was said to have been one of the women who helped procure the underage girls for Epstein. She has denied that. But her father was Robert Maxwell, a media and press baron who owned the Mirror News Group in England and also the New York Daily News. He was a former Mossad agent. And according to my source, Ari Ben-Mashari, the business that Robert Maxwell had was turned over to Jeffrey Epstein almost in a switch before Robert Maxwell died in mysterious circumstances off the back of a boat in 1991.
Well, this is mind-boggling stuff.
I can help you understand the timeline and who participated with Jeffrey Epstein and how he became a spy and what he did when he became a spy. I can help you in all those areas because I was there.
You were there? Did he tell you? Did he tell you I'm a spy? Did he go and say I'm working for the Israelis?
Yes. He told me that he was a spy. He was fully aware that I was asked to join to be a spy and that I rejected the request.
Now, pertaining to the sexual blackmail, which is what, of course, everyone thinks about when they think of Epstein, it's not without precedent because they've done it before with a guy named Eli Cohen, born in Egypt to a Syrian Jewish family and recruited into Israeli military intelligence in 1959 and sent to Argentina in 1961 to build a Syrian cover identity, was indeed at the center of a blackmail operation while infiltrating the Syrian Ba'ath elite in the early to mid-60s. The leverage he used was systematic sexual and financial compromise of Syrian officers and politicians. Cohen rented a luxury apartment on Abu Rumaniyah Street in Damascus and a villa in the orchards south of the city. These became discreet venues for parties where alcohol, hashish, and prostitutes, some provided by Syrian Alawite smugglers who were themselves on Mossad's payroll, were supplied to ranking members of the Ba'ath Party and the Syrian army. Hidden microphones and 8mm film cameras concealed behind mirrors and in ceiling fans recorded the encounters. Officers who had been compromised were then instructed to bring additional colleagues to Cohen's gatherings, expanding the honey trap. Hence, the blackmail pyramid grew. By early 1965, Cohen controlled at least 9 Syrian colonels and 2 Ba'ath Regional Command members. Of course, the Syrians caught him eventually, and they killed him. Executed him, which of course I think I probably would have too. But it just shows you that this is an old playbook that they've been running. And they've done it before, and who's to know they're still not doing it now.
A lot of very wealthy people don't own an island. Islands are really tough to maintain. Every rich person starts to wonder, can I afford an island? Or how many jets? If you look at Jeffrey Epstein's wealth, it was like gold beaten into gold foil so that it could cover a vast area and leave the impression of a solid gold life.
Owns a private island over a mile away from St. Thomas, the main island, and it's isolated. He purchases that. He owns the jet that flew in to the airport, and he owns the helicopter and the boats that transported him and the women and children over to the island.
U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George, she put it bluntly, Epstein owned the whole supply chain, jet, helicopter, launch boat. Once you're on that island, there's no taxi to wave down.
This is the part that really blew me away. I hadn't heard this before. But, Ghislaine Maxwell didn't work for Epstein. He worked for her. She was the one running the whole show. I couldn't possibly enumerate all the stuff that she did and how she did it in 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 cards. So I'm going to post that at the end of the video, and you can look at it and pause your video, and that way you can read, if you want to, all the shit that she was doing. Anyway, Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's Mossad-appointed handler and logistics chief, not merely a groomer. Her job description, codenamed Tamar, was spelled out in that 1997 internal Caesarea memo leaked to French magistrate Roger Lelore in 2020. Bottom line, Maxwell was Epstein's Mossad handler, not his girlfriend. She recruited, filmed, blackmailed, laundered, and eliminated at the direction of Unit 8200 and Caesarea. Now, 8200 is like the NSA on steroids, and Caesarea is sort of an amalgam of financial crimes and assassination. It does financial crimes and assassination work. And, she was working for them. They had a recruitment and talent pipeline, blackmail studio manager, financial controller, and operational security and elimination. So that's Maxwell. She was it. She was the one. And you know, she's still alive. She's still alive. She could still talk if she's brave enough to, or she'd get Epstein herself. Oh, yeah, Epstein's death. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, too.
And remember Ghislaine Maxwell? How could we forget? She was the socialite turned enforcer. Court testimony shows that she handled all the logistics: recruitment, room assignments, school uniform costumes, passport confiscations. And in 2022, she gets 20 years for trafficking. But remember, not one client, not one, joins the defendant's bench.
Alex Acosta, he was the Epstein prosecutor in the initial case where Epstein was, given a wrist slap and let off. Then he was asked by the press, well, why didn't you go harder on Epstein? Why did you let him go? He said, I was told to back off Epstein because he belonged to intelligence. The fact is Epstein has been running through these CIA networks for 40 years, but there's also all the international networks. He belonged to intelligence meant just U.S. intelligence, although there absolutely was U.S. intelligence, but there could also be a role of Israeli intelligence. There could be a role of UK, British intelligence. There could be a role of Saudi intelligence because he was working with Adnan Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia, appeared to have deep ties to the royal family in the UK, and of course appears to have links to many aspects of Israeli intelligence.
And I forgot to mention, Maxwell's father was really big in the Mossad. When he died, they had a great big state funeral for him in Jerusalem. And all the head honchos of their intelligence were there. And Maxwell, according to this, Maxwell was the one who had Epstein murdered. She had some guys, she sent some guys in there, they drugged him, knocked him out with something, then strangled him to death, and then hung him up and made it look like a suicide. Anyway, Epstein wasn't a lone pedophile with a private jet. He was running a state-protected, industrial-scale child sex procurement ring for the Israeli intelligence apparatus with the express purpose of filming, cataloging, and blackmailing Western elites. The operation was compartmentalized into 4 tiers. Number 1, the recruitment and grooming pipeline. This is what Maxwell was into. Primary targets were 12 to 16-year-old white girls from broken homes in Florida, New Mexico, and USVI, United States Virgin Islands. The method was modeling scams run by Ghislaine Maxwell and Sarah Keelan Vickers through MC2 Model Management, a Mossad front in Miami. The agency flew 246 underage girls on one-way tickets to Epstein's properties between 2002 and 2005. The girls were given fake IDs by New Mexico Department of Motor Vehicle employees, one of whom was M. Lopez. It was indicted in 2021 and transported on Epstein's Gulfstream under the tail number N212JE, which was exempt from TSA checks via diplomatic immunity letters signed by Israeli consulates in Miami and New York City. Man.
The real question is, why was he doing this, on whose behalf, and where did the money come from? And those are the questions that need to be answered. And I think it's entirely fair to ask them. And it's not adequate to say anyone who asked them is somehow desecrating the memory of little girls who died in Texas. Are not going to put up with that answer.
Number 2, abuse locations. Little St. James, of course, United States Virgin Islands. There was a temple under which were tunnels with twin steel doors and soundproof chambers. The FBI raid in July 2019 found hidden cameras, bondage gear, and DNA evidence from over 50 victims. Next is Zorro Ranch, 8,000-acre compound with a baby-making wing where girls were impregnated and forced to abort. Epstein's breeding program was funded by Les Wexner and documented by Mossad for eugenics research. And there's a Paris apartment, Avenue Foch. Underage girls flown in from Epstein from Eastern Europe and sold to Saudi and Qatari princes during Fashion Week. French authorities seized the property in 2020, but refused to release the evidence. He had a buddy in France named Jean-Luc Brunel, who was operating a modeling agency. And what happened to him? Well, he hung himself in his cell. Gee, what a surprise.
But what he's good at is that he's good at numbers, and he makes friends with important people. And his career really seems to get going when he figures out new ways to dodge taxes. That's how he meets rich people, because he can come up with different strategies to avoid a tax burden.
Economist Eric Weinstein, he leaves one meeting convinced Epstein was a construct, not a prodigy.
Oh, also at the very end, I'm going to do a sort of a deep dive into that video that purportedly shows Epstein's cell, and that somehow or another shows that he committed suicide, which is a crock. And I'm going to show you just how and why at the end. So anyway, number 3, blackmail and extortion. Hidden cameras. Every bedroom and bathroom in Epstein's properties was wired for video and audio. The footage was digitally cataloged by Ben Menashe's Israel Intelligence Services and stored on Mossad servers in Herzliya. The targets were people like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, who's been named. He denies it, and I'm just saying that he was named. Ehud Barak, Bill Gates, and dozens of Fortune 500 CEOs. Each was filmed with underage girls and given a private viewing to ensure compliance. The payoff, the victims were paid hush money from Epstein's Mossad-funded accounts. The Virgin Islands Butterfly Trust dispersed $150 million to over 200 victims between 2008 and 2019. See, it goes beyond big-name celebrities and politicians. They were going after not so much the people with power, but the people behind them. Billionaires who apportion political donations and give money to foundations and what have you. Those were the real guys they were going after. Oligarchs. Because if they can control the oligarchs, they can just as easily control the politicians through them as they can through direct blackmail, although they did do some of that too. Next, number 4, cover-up and elimination. There was a 2008 sweetheart deal given by Alex Acosta, the then U.S. attorney, who was ordered by Mossad to seal the evidence and grant immunity to all co-conspirators. The non-prosecution agreement was illegally signed without notifying the victims. Epstein was murdered in his cell at MCC Manhattan. The cameras malfunctioned, the guards falsified logs, and the autopsy photos showed fractures consistent with strangulation, not hanging. The Mossad cleaner squad was captured on CCTV entering the facility hours before his death. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted in 2021 but refused to name her Mossad handlers. She is currently in protective custody and will likely be suicided before she can testify. The true scale of Epstein's sex crimes will never be known. The Mossad archives were sealed forever, and the Western elites who were compromised will never allow full investigation. Now here's the drawing of Epstein's cell where he supposedly committed suicide. Now up here is the video that they're always presenting as being the evidence that Epstein killed himself. What most people don't realize is that these are not his cells, these 2 doors. They're not anyone's cells. Epstein's cell was on the other side of the building. If you'll see that little orange circle, you can barely see the left side of the stairs going up to where Epstein's cell was located. Now, I've drawn a more detailed picture of it down here. As you can see, Epstein's cell is circled in red, squared off in red, and that orange line there shows you the demarcation point of the video. So as you can see, there's plenty of room for somebody to come around down below and then come up the right side of those stairs to get to him. So anyway, all you're seeing is this empty, vacant space out here on the left. This in no way shows what they say it shows. And they just think we're all stupid and go along with it. Actually, most people are stupid, and they will go along with it because they don't take the trouble to find out for themselves.
Because I was so mad about it that I think I found out part of what's going on. I think we are going to find out more. And I think the truth, for whatever it's worth, in case you're interested, is that the DOJ didn't release lots of incriminating sex videos with Epstein and his billionaire pals because they don't have them. They don't have them because when the original search warrant was served 2007, I think, possibly 2006, I think 7, it was basically designed to protect Epstein. The search warrant was written in such a way to make sure that the feds never got their hands on the actually incriminating evidence. It's another way of saying the cover-up has been going on since 2007, almost 20 years.